holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Julian Wong, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Saturday/Sunday, March 21st to 22nd, 2026 issues of the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Iran sees an opening to control Mid-East energy over long run. Dubai. 3 weeks into the war, Iran's regime is signaling that it believes it is winning and has the power to impose a settlement on Washington that entrenches Tehran's dominance of Middle East energy resources for decades to come. This attitude might prove to be a dangerous misreading of President Trump's determination, or of Israel's capacity to inflict blows on the Islamic Republic's surviving leadership and military capabilities. Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel have given mixed signals on how long the war would go on, as they try to talk markets down and keep Tehran guessing. Netanyahu said Thursday the war would end a lot faster than people think. Trump said this week the United States would wrap up the conflict in the near future, even as the Pentagon sent thousands of additional Marines to the region. The problem is, Iran also has a say in when the guns fall silent, and for now, it seems to think time works to its benefit. Despite optimistic United States and Israeli pronouncements about destroying launchers and missile stocks, Iran has retained the ability to fire dozens of ballistic missiles and many more drones every day across the Middle East. Instead of declining, the rate of fire actually picked up in recent days compared with 10 days ago. Iranian strikes this past week badly damaged key energy installations in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, while Iran's own oil exports kept booming. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf's choke point, remains only possible with Iranian permission. Surging oil and gas prices, meanwhile, are exacting growing pain on economies worldwide, and pressuring Trump to end a war that he began in expectation of swift victory. The Iranians aren't ready to end the war because they have learned an important lesson. They can, comparatively, easily and cheaply, cause a lot of damage and disruption. They now want the whole world to learn that lesson too, said Dina Esfandiari, an analyst on Iran and author of a book on Iran's foreign relations. Seeing its leverage, Tehran has pledged it would agree to a ceasefire only if Washington and the Gulf states pay a steep price. The spokesman of the Iranian Parliament's Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, Ibrahim Reziai, said after Friday's meeting with military commanders that any talks with the United States are off the agenda as Tehran focuses on punishing the aggressors. Other Iranian leaders have been just as triumphalist, with Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi describing Iran as another Vietnam for the United States. That rhetoric may underestimate Washington's resolve. This hubris is dangerous because they are not smart enough to understand that President Trump will never let them win. They don't understand how far he's willing to go, said Jason Greenblatt, who served as the White House special envoy for the Middle East in the first Trump administration. This can come at a huge cost, but the cost of not taking care of the problem will be many times more expensive over many, many years. demands voiced by Iranian leaders in recent days, as conditions for ending the war include massive reparations from the United States and its allies, and the expulsion of U.S. military forces from the region. They have also called for transforming the Strait of Hormuz, an international waterway where free navigation is guaranteed under international law, into an Iranian toll booth controlling 1/3 of the world's shipborne crude oil. Iran is planning to enshrine a new status for the Strait of Hormuz, to require every passing ship to pay fees to Tehran for the privilege. Expediency Council member Mohammad Mokbar, an advisor to the Supreme Leader on Economic Affairs, told the country's Mehr news agency. Iran will turn its position from a sanctioned country to an enhanced power in the region and the world, he said. It is hard to imagine the United States or the Gulf states accepting such an arrangement. Trump has repeatedly vowed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by force if necessary, and has ordered marine expeditionary units to sail to the Middle East. A United States effort to secure shipping lanes through the strait would be a simple military maneuver with so little risk, Trump said Friday in a Truth Social post criticizing European allies for refusing to join the mission. In the age of drones and portable anti-ship missiles, retaking the strait would be anything but simple, but not impossible, military experts said. Round-the-clock intelligence and surveillance flights that are now available because of U.S. air superiority, combined with rapid targeting of Iranian weapon systems, could make the difference, said retired United States Air Force Lieutenant General David Deptula, Dean of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies. It's not something that is going to happen overnight, but over time, the Strait of Hormuz will open back to the levels of shipping that we saw before this conflict broke out. It is a reasonable estimate that it will be a matter of weeks, he said. The Iranians are not going to end up with control over the strait. We are. Indeed, the geopolitical implications of allowing Iran to end up in charge of the waterway would be unacceptable, said Sanam Vakil, director of the Chatham House think tank's Middle East and North Africa program. If the United States cuts and runs, leaving Iran's Islamic Republic to do what it does best, hold everyone hostage, then the war will be a categorical failure for the United States, she said. Trump seeks to alter narrative on ICE. President has told his inner circle some mass deportation policies went too far. Washington. President Trump is seeking to lower the profile of his mass deportation effort and has directed his top advisors to adopt a new approach on one of his central campaign promises, according to people familiar with the matter. In conversations with top advisors and his wife, Melania, Trump has become convinced that some of his administration's deportation policies have gone too far, and voters don't like the term mass deportation. The president has told them he wants to see more attention on the bad guys and less chaos in cities, according to people familiar with the matter. The desire for an immigration reset is being driven in part by Trump's White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, who believes the president's immigration team has turned one of his marquee issues into more of a challenging issue ahead of the midterms, the People said. As a result, the administration is attempting to change not only how it talks about the issue, but also what actual enforcement looks like on the ground. The shift has been spearheaded by White House border czar Tom Homan since he took over ICE operations in Minneapolis. Long a relatively measured voice inside the administration on immigration issues, Homan prefers immigration and customs enforcement officers to focus on bread and butter arrests of criminals, particularly those who can be handed over by local jails. ICE leadership isn't moving forward, for now, with high-profile operations like the ones it previously conducted in cities like Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Minneapolis, according to officials familiar with the matter. Administration officials said they could increase operations in the future. Arrests of immigrants have ticked down to about 12,000 a day, 1,200 a day, for more than 1,500 a day when ICE was running its unprecedented operation in Minnesota, according to people familiar with the numbers. Nobody is changing the administration's immigration enforcement agenda. President Trump's highest priority has always been the deportation of illegal alien criminals who endanger American communities, White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson said. Trump's advisors view the firing of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem as a prime moment for a reset. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, Republican from Oklahoma, the president's pick to succeed Noem, said at his confirmation hearing that if confirmed, he would redirect ICE from some of the more confrontational clashes that have come to define the agency under Trump, in favor of a more cooperative approach with local officials. He also promised to reverse several of Noem's ICE directives, including one policy, which the agency kept secret for months, giving officers permission to force entry into immigrants' private homes without a criminal warrant signed by a judge. My goal in 6 months is that we're not in the lead story every day, Mullen said. Trump, a Republican, has complained to advisors in recent days about the bad headlines the administration received under Noem's tenure, and has asked aides if they were aware of her unusual contract approval process, according to people familiar with the matter. Several polls early in Trump's term found that voters strongly supported his goal of deporting illegal immigrants. Since then, some polls have found increasing opposition to his approach. A Washington Post/ABC News survey found last month 58% agreeing with the statement Trump is going too far with deportations, up from 48% last April. The shift in tone is alarming some of the president's closest outside immigration allies, who spent years preparing for a second Trump term in which they hoped he would enact the widespread deportation campaign they have long advocated for. Republicans need to turn out their base for the midterms, and not talking about President Trump's promises, his signature campaign promise, is not the way to turn them out, said Rosemary Jenks, co-founder of the Immigration Accountability Project, a conservative immigration group. Several outside groups, including Jenks, have formed a new campaign called the Mass Deportation Coalition to pressure the administration to continue an aggressive approach. Rather than criticize Trump outright for carrying out what, in their view, is far too few deportations, they have instead branded his first year in office the initial phase of the campaign. Now it is time to move to the second phase, removing large numbers of deportable aliens from the country expeditiously, the group said. They are urging ICE to carry out a minimum of 1 million deportations in 2026. The goal, Trump's key immigration advisor, Stephen Miller, publicly set for 2025, but that the administration didn't come close to achieving. On the campaign trail, Trump suggested he would deport as many as 20 million people. Democrats and immigration advocates have voiced skepticism that much will change from the administration, given that Miller is still in place. I want to make sure that if you're there, you're in charge and not Stephen Miller, Senator Ruben Gallego, Democrat from Arizona, told Mullen at his hearing. Even after Mullen takes over, ICE officials are likely to focus more on operations like small workplace raids, which advisors view as more politically justifiable, according to people familiar with the matter. Trump's advisors have shown in polling that finds the mass deportation term is less popular, and he has repeatedly emphasized to aides in Oval Office meetings and in phone calls that they should use the word criminals to describe who their targets are, one senior administration official said. Trump wants to show some of the most hardened-looking criminals in a visual way ahead of the election, the official said. James Blair, one of the president's top advisors, recently told Republican members of Congress to talk about criminals instead of mass deportations, messaging that is desired by the president according to administration officials. We've got to focus on the criminals, Trump has told senior aides. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Beijing's big problem: a shrinking economy. By most standards, China's economy has never been stronger. Its exporters have powered the country to a $1.2 trillion surplus with the world. It is the global leader in strategically important industries such as electric vehicles, solar panels, shipbuilding, and humanoid robots. Yet, by one important measure, China's global heft is shrinking. In dollar terms, China's gross domestic product, as a share of the global economy, peaked in 2021 at around 19%, when it grew to be around 3/4 of the size of the U.S. economy. Many economists predicted China's growth would eventually make its economy bigger than that of the United States. Instead, China's share of the pie has decreased, ending 2025 at around 17% of the global economy. It is now less than 2/3 the size of the United States economy, according to International Monetary Fund data. Beijing continues to post growth figures that easily exceed developed countries. Although China's government has projected lower growth for 2026 than in any year since the early 1990s, it still expects to grow at 4.5% to 5% in real terms, double the typical rate of the United States over the past decade. But a combination of domestic deflation, which reduces the value of goods in the economy, and a weak yuan has zapped the relative size of China's economy as measured in dollar terms. So even though China's economy has been producing more goods than ever, the dollar value of what it makes has been stagnant. It puts a big dent in the narrative of China being the rising power globally, said Mark Williams, chief Asia economist at Capital Economics. The shift is about more than economics. For China, growing economic clout is a point of pride and a sign of geopolitical strength. There are different ways to measure the size of a nation's economy. Measuring it in dollars assesses China's overall weight in the global marketplace. Another method, purchasing power parity, shows how much Chinese can purchase at home. According to this yardstick, China's economy far exceeds the United States. A different measure is to compare economies using dollars from a fixed point in time, thus eliminating the effects of inflation. By that gauge, China is growing consistently. But economists often compare the size of economies using present-day dollars, because the dollar is the currency of international trade and a measure of actual buying power globally. That makes China's shrinking share of the global economy worrying for global businesses, whose investments in China bring home less in dollar terms now. When China's relative weight began declining several years ago, companies were caught out. In a 2016 speech in Beijing, Pablo Illa, chairman of Spanish retailer Inditex, the parent company of Zara, declared that China is the number one priority. From 2010 to 2018, Inditex averaged roughly a new store opening in China every week. By 2018, it had nearly 600 outlets in mainland China. But soon, China's economy faced challenges. Excuse me. A generally weaker yuan after 2015 made sales earned in yuan less valuable when converted into euros or dollars. Moreover, the onset of deflation and competition from homegrown brands have made competing in China a slog for Western brands. Everybody wanted to get into China because there was this perception that it was this hugely growing market, Williams said. But if it's not growing in dollar terms, and dollars is what you're earning if you're the foreign firm trying to sell in China, then that really undercuts that narrative. From 2018 to 2026, Inditex reduced its store count in mainland China by around 80%. Now, sales in the Americas and even in Spain exceed sales in the region dubbed Asia and the rest of the world. In a statement, Inditex said it has embraced e-commerce opportunities in China and has opened some large stores there recently. China's economic situation echoes the economic trajectory of Japan, which grew to be nearly 3/4 of the United States economy in 1995, but has since fallen to less than 15% of the United States, as a weak yen and deflation eroded the country's buying power. Japan remains economically influential, but it isn't the global juggernaut it was in the 1980s and 1990s. It is far from clear that China will continue on the same path as Japan. Still, China's stagnant dollar economy is at the heart of many of its most trenchant problems. Fierce competition at home that is driving prices and profits lower is pushing many Chinese companies to export instead of selling domestically. The weakness of the yuan also means they earn more selling their goods in dollars or euros. The result has been a huge export push that has overwhelmed foreign manufacturers who can't compete with the flood of Chinese goods, straining trade relationships. Last month, the IMF wrote that China's real exchange depreciation was contributing to strong exports and said the government should promote consumption at home. A separate IMF post noted that growth has been increasingly dependent on external demand. Chinese exports surged 22% in the first 2 months of the year. China's government has promised recently to push consumption at home, which could potentially boost inflation and expand the size of the economy in dollar terms. Some economists see signs that China is turning a corner. The yuan has been strengthening against the dollar in recent months, which could mean that China's share of the global economy, denominated in dollars, may be set for a rebound this year. Starting in 2026, the IMF projects China's share of the global economy will start growing again, though at a very slow pace. Democrats' frustration with Schumer grows. Senator Chris Murphy was dining with progressive activists at a French restaurant in Georgetown when the conversation about how to advance their legislative priorities turned to a thorny question: what to do about Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. To the surprise of some attendees, the Connecticut Democrat, a rising star in the party's left flank, responded that some lawmakers have been doing informal counts to see whether enough votes existed to remove the New York Democrat from his leadership position, according to people familiar with the mid-February dinner. Murphy explained that Schumer had enough backing to remain the leader. But the disclosure stood out because it revealed that frustration inside the Senate had reached a high enough level that some Democrats were actively contemplating how to oust Schumer. Murphy is among a group of senators and top advisors who have grown increasingly dissatisfied with Schumer's leadership, according to people familiar with the conversations. That group includes Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, who has been initiating conversations with other senators to gauge frustrations with Schumer, some of the people said. Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota has also been active in discussions about her frustrations with Schumer, and her advisors have spoken with other Senate staff about different scenarios to challenge Schumer's leadership, other people said. In an interview, Murphy said he is frequently asked about Senate leadership, but he doesn't have a count of who would vote to remove Schumer and doesn't recall mentioning one. Could someone infer from that someone was keeping a count? Maybe, but that's not what I meant, Murphy said. I meant that he has the support of the caucus. He said he still supports Schumer. In more than 4 dozen interviews with Democratic senators, candidates, current and former congressional aides, activists, and advisors, many said the concern about Schumer's leadership was widespread. Meetings between Democratic chiefs of staff on Senate business often veer into airing discontent with Schumer, a 75-year-old who is next up for re-election in 2028, and how to pressure him to step aside as leader after November's elections, attendees and other familiars with the discussions said. Murphy, Warren, and Smith are part of a batch of senators dubbed Fight Club, who are particularly incensed by Schumer's approach to the midterms. This group of progressives believes that Schumer favors centrist candidates in some key races and is disregarding the enthusiasm a new crop of outsiders is stoking. The senators maintain a Fight Club signal chat where they have discussed how to counter Schumer's preferred candidates, according to people familiar with the conversations. The existence of the group was reported earlier by the New York Times. The divide over Schumer's leadership is part of broader tension inside the Democratic Party about its future. It has roots in Schumer's handling of last year's record-long government shutdown and an earlier spending fight. Some Democrats said Schumer, who has led Democrats in the Senate since 2017, keeps his cards so close to his vest that other members of the party are effectively boxed out from strategic decisions. In an interview Thursday in his office, Schumer said that all congressional leaders draw criticism. That goes with the territory. It's true for anyone who's a leader, he said. He said that his support in the caucus is deep and strong, because people feel I've done a very good job of setting up Democrats to win back the Senate in November. Republicans currently hold a 53 to 47 majority. The question is, are you able to forge some unity and make real progress on the most important goals, said Schumer, who's been in Congress since 1981 and a senator since 1999. I think I've done that. As far as conversations about replacing him, Schumer said, I haven't heard of them myself. Asked if he planned to run to remain as Democratic leader after the midterms, Schumer didn't answer directly and pointed again to the elections. That's what my focus is, period. Schumer hasn't said if he is running for re-election in 2028. In an interview, Warren said Democratic leadership shouldn't weigh in on contested primaries, but she didn't directly address whether she supported Schumer. Smith's office declined to make her available for an interview. Murphy said that while he has been critical at times of Schumer's tactics and wanted Democrats to show more fight, he believes the leader works hard to keep the caucus together. Schumer's allies said he retains the backing to keep his job. Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii said that having people get grouchy at you is part of being minority leader. Chuck's got broad and deep support, Schatz said. Even his detractors would have to admit that we have an extraordinary class of candidates for the Senate, and that wouldn't have happened without him. Schatz is seen as Schumer's preferred pick to succeed him once he does relinquish the leadership post, people familiar with the matter said. Schatz won't make any moves until Schumer decides to step aside, according to senators, aides, and others familiar with the discussions. Senate leaders are typically chosen in a secret ballot vote after the November elections. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. At a minimum, some Senate Democrats and aides want Schumer to commit to retiring from the Senate when he is up for re-election, people familiar with the conversation said. They see him as an impediment to change who is slowing the party's drive to stand up to President Trump and thwarting a new generation of leadership from rising. Senate Democrats across the political spectrum have also come to see Schumer as a liability with their voters, those people said. At a fall gathering of major Democratic donors and party leaders in Washington, senators and aides were mobbed by donors asking for a plan to replace Schumer, according to people familiar with the event. One of those people said some were calling it the Chuck movement. Donor frustration with Schumer has already been hurting a super PAC aligned with the Democratic leader, donors and consultants said. Senate Majority PAC was outraised by the Republican leadership-aligned super PAC last year. The Democratic super PAC started 2026 with $36 million in the bank and $12.4 million in debt, while its GOP counterpart had $100 million and no debt, according to Federal Election Commission filings. J.B. Porsche, president of Senate Majority PAC, said the group is on track to meet or exceed its fundraising projections, and some donors were giving because of Schumer. A number of Democratic senators provided the Wall Street Journal with interviews or statements in support of the leader. They included Schatz, Senators Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada, Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, Chris Coons of Delaware, and Tim Kaine of Virginia. There are frustrations, to be sure, but I think Chuck had to go through the mental shift that we all did in going from a somewhat high-achieving majority to a minority where the tools are different, Kaine said. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland is one option that progressives are discussing to succeed Schumer. A person familiar with the matter said he isn't seeking the role, but believes the current moment requires a discussion about how to counter Trump, a Republican, more effectively and show what Democrats stand for. Democrats are feeling more optimistic about their chances of making gains in the Senate, in part because of the strong recruits in states like North Carolina, Alaska, and Ohio. Some of Schumer's critics said they were concerned that he would see election victories as a mandate to continue as leader. They would like him to commit before the November elections to relinquish his leadership post. Progressives inside and outside the Senate said that Schumer is putting his thumb on the scales for more centrist candidates in primaries in must-win states of Michigan, Minnesota, and Maine. Warren said that there are clearly some candidates that the Democratic leadership have been working to advance, and I've pushed back hard against that, because I don't think the leadership should be weighing in on contested primaries. AI companies pour money into midterms. Groups opposed to strict AI regulations target New York congressional candidate. More than 100 people crowded into a bar on a chilly Saturday evening on Manhattan's West Side to draw up battle plans for a brewing national showdown over artificial intelligence policy. Their leader is Alex Boris, a 35-year-old computer scientist and New York State Assemblyman who is running to represent a congressional district that covers much of Manhattan. Until recently, he was considered a long shot in a June Democratic primary with a dozen candidates, including anti-Trump lawyer George Conway and Jack Schlossberg, grandson of John F. Kennedy. That was before a big AI political action committee decided to spend millions of dollars opposing him. Now, Boris's dad regularly receives negative flyers about him in his mailbox. Neighbors ask him in the elevator about anti-Boris texts they've received. He even spotted his own face on TV through the window of a nearby deli in an attack ad by a pro-AI PAC. AI companies have plunged into the election influence game, borrowing from the playbook of the largest cryptocurrency super PAC, which spent nearly $200 million to boost allies and punish opponents in the 2024 elections. AI companies have pledged about $265 million for super PACs and similar groups ahead of this year's midterm elections. Crypto's big 2024 bet paid off, with President Trump rolling back regulatory actions and Congress passing an industry-friendly law last year. The Boris campaign is shaping up as a test case for the super PAC trying to send a message. If a lawmaker pursues safety standards that aren't supported by industry giants, such as ChatGPT maker OpenAI, it doesn't matter how obscure they are, they will have to face the industry's wrath. Boris, who is young and relatively unknown to voters, has faced $2 million in attack ads thus far, raising his profile in the crowded field. He launched his campaign with a focus on affordability, but had sponsored an AI safety bill that was signed into law by New York Governor Kathy Hochul last year. His bill tackled a few of the myriad questions about how the government should oversee rapidly advancing AI, such as requiring companies to publish safety protocols explaining how they curb their tech's ability to create bioweapons or carry out crimes. Other states are tackling questions such as whether AI companies can be held liable if software screening job applicants discriminates against women or minorities. At stake is whether the United States government is going to miss the boat on AI as badly as we missed it on social media, or if Americans are going to have a say in the most consequential technology of their lifetimes, Boris said in an interview. Standing on a bistro chair in the crowded Manhattan bar, Boris urged supporters to treat the fight in his district as a fight for the country. They want to win a race, and then go to every single member of Congress and say, if you dare to regulate AI, we are going to come in and spend $10 million against you. The super PAC behind the anti-Boris campaign, Leading the Future, said it hasn't earmarked $10 million to spend against Boris, but that it is against but that it is amassing a $125 million war chest overall, mostly from a top executive at OpenAI and venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz. The group aims to fight regulations they say will strangle AI. Meta Platforms, which now describes itself as an AI company, has seeded multiple PACs with $65 million. We want the national regulation most voters support, said Josh Velosto, one of Leading the Future's co-heads. They want the state regulation that would slow everything down and create this patchwork. That super PAC is spending money on House primary runoffs in Texas, the battle to replace Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene in Georgia, and the Florida governor's race, hoping to stave off AI backlash among MAGA Republicans. It also is monitoring AI bills in states including Utah, with an eye on future targets, Velosto said. Favored candidates won their recent primaries in Texas, North Carolina, and Illinois, although Jesse Jackson Jr., son of the famous civil rights activist, lost his primary in Illinois after getting money from the PAC. The industry's spending binge is colliding with mounting voter concerns about energy use by AI data centers and the potential for widespread job losses. In recent months, several state legislatures have blocked new data centers from being built after pressure from residents. Bores's bar gathering in Manhattan drew a crowd of college students and recent graduates who expressed concern about AI wiping out entry-level jobs and putting their generation at a disadvantage. One of Bores's state assembly aides, Julie Rowland, said she was inspired to work for him after seeing how AI capabilities had jumped from barely doing math when she started law school to drafting briefs by the time she was done. This year's political battle has roots in a titanic business clash. The AI industry has argued that bills like Bores's make progress burdensome and set the United States behind in the race for global advancement. Leading the Future co-head Velosto said a Federal Election Commission filing released in January, which showed that employees of AI company Anthropic had given nearly $130,000 to Bores's campaign the day it launched in October, validated the super PAC's strategy to target him. Anthropic has staked its business on being pro-regulation and responsible in how it manages AI, an approach that has put it in conflict with the Trump administration. Velosto, a former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, and ex-New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, saw the donations as proof that Bores was secretly allied with the Anthropic-led Doomer wing of the industry, which backs increased government involvement that could slow the development of powerful AI tools. To proponents of lightly regulated AI, whose point of view has been embraced by Trump, speed is essential as the United States races to develop new technology faster than China. Velosto said the first person listed on Bores's donor filings was an employee at the data analysis firm Palantir, which has been criticized for its contracts with immigration and custom enforcement. Bores used to work at Palantir as a data scientist, and Velosto's group devoted much of its campaign against him to highlighting that link. He made hundreds of thousands of dollars building and selling the tech for ICE, said one TV ad that aired in New York City. Bores is a hypocrite on ICE, said another ad on Instagram. Bores said he quit Palantir in part because of his contracts with ICE and his intended anti-ICE rallies. In 2023, Velosto became a media strategist and spokesman for the crypto super PAC Fair Shake. The group successfully backed winners or opposed losers in about 85% of the races it spent money on in 2024. He is taking the same approach to AI. I'd much prefer the carrot, but I'm not afraid of the stick, he said. Leading the Future says Borez and Anthropic are part of a network of so-called effective altruists that has poured money into left-leaning nonprofits and efforts to promote AI regulations. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The Super PAC and its allies say fears of AI running amok are exaggerated, and regulations being proposed would slow the U.S. Existing laws, they say, already make it illegal to create a bioweapon or conduct other nefarious activities. They contend Anthropic is pushing for rules that would benefit it and hurt competitors. Anthropic has said it isn't a company of effective altruists, and it isn't political, and that the policies it supports are best for AI development. Hamza Chaudhry, who leads AI and national security work at the Future of Life Institute, which advocates for AI guardrails, said he is troubled by the industry's big political spending. There will be a dark figure here of electoral pressure that goes past what we will ever know, Chaudhry said. In February, Anthropic pledged $20 million for Public First Action, a group opposing Leading the Future. It hopes to raise $75 million initially, and recently said it would spend $450,000 on ads supporting Borez. The group spent about $1.6 million backing North Carolina Democratic Representative Valerie Foushee, who recently won a tight primary. The AI industry is flooding Washington with cash. Last year, 1 in 4 federal lobbyists pitched lawmakers on AI policy, data centers, or autonomous vehicles, according to an analysis by the government watchdog group Public Citizen. Meta and 7 other big tech companies collectively spent $71 million lobbying last year. That amounts to some $330,000 per day that Congress was in session, according to Issue 1, an organization that advocates reducing money in politics. Congress has shown little appetite to pass laws that tackle potential AI harms, making New York and California critical influence battlegrounds. In New York, following a lobbying campaign by Meta, Google, and others, Hochul tweaked Borez's bill to make fines and transparency requirements less onerous and mirror California's legislation. As California debated AI safety bills, tech companies retained some political insiders to help make their case. OpenAI retained former U.S. Senator LaFonza Butler and Ann O'Leary, former chief of staff to Governor Gavin Newsom. Amazon and others brought in the former leader of the state assembly, Bob Hertzberg. After Newsom vetoed the state legislator's initial attempt to pass an AI bill, the influx of lobbyists helped big tech strike a fresh deal with lawmakers that Newsom signed in late 2025. Negotiations are getting heated elsewhere. Colorado in 2024 passed one of the country's first bills creating consumers' protections, such as preventing AI models from disqualifying job applicants based on race or gender, but it is yet to go into effect. AI companies have argued extensively for revisions. Borez plunged into the Manhattan congressional race after 3 years in the state assembly, where his chief achievement was shepherding the AI bill. According to the lone public poll in the race, Kennedy family scion Jack Schlossberg, who is endorsed by former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, currently has the lead. Michael Lasher, a Nadler protege who also worked for ex-mayor Michael Bloomberg, is also considered a strong contender. Veteran New York strategist Hank Scheinkopf said the attack ads by the AI industry have helped Boris break through. The PACs, he said, have made Boris, in some ways, the most significant figure in the race. Tom Brady's next opponent is America's flag football team. The moment flag football was approved for the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, a who's who of the NFL's biggest stars all had the same reaction. We want in. Even Tom Brady, who will be 50 by then, is interested in dusting off his cleats. The problem is that there's already a bunch of Americans who cross the rest of the world with flags on their hips. They're the members of the existing Team USA flag team, and, crazy as it sounds, they might be better at this version of the sport than the millionaires who play on Sundays. We're actually interested to find that out ourselves, Brady said in an interview. There's a lot for us to learn. The experiment will be a 3-team exhibition in Los Angeles known as the Fanatics Flag Football Classic. 2 squads will be composed of A-list NFL players and legends, ranging from quarterback Joe Burrow and running back Saquon Barkley to Brady and his longtime tight end Rob Gronkowski. The third will be the U.S. National Flag Squad, players who have never played a single snap in the NFL. They're more accustomed to opponents from far-flung countries such as Serbia and Panama. But while the flag team would undoubtedly be trampled in any game that required pads and a helmet, this version of the sport is distinct enough that a team of NFL All-Pros has no guarantees of cruising to victory. For anyone who hasn't played flag football since middle school, a refresher on the rules. Games are 5-on-5 on fields measuring 25 yards wide and 50 yards long, plus 10-yard end zones. There is no blocking or tackling, and plenty of teams put 2 quarterbacks on the field, opening up the playbook for 2 different players to throw the ball. Those who have successfully made the transition to flag are the players who have learned to run around defenders and create separation without physicality. On the other side of the ball, defensive backs have to cover opponents without jamming or hand fighting. There's a lot of small nuances mentally and physically, says Callie Brownson, who spent 5 years on the Cleveland Browns coaching staff before joining USA Football as the senior director of high performance. A big part is reprogramming the muscle memory. No one would ever confuse Jadeon High with Jerry Rice, but as one of the premier receivers in flag football, High understands as well as anyone how the gameplay differs. Before joining Team USA, High was a walk-on wideout at Texas Tech, catching passes from a young quarterback named Patrick Mahomes. Some qualities, such as his hands and ball tracking, translated instantly. But High also learned to use his body in a completely new way. He had to get open in smaller spaces, and instead of bracing for a hit when he caught the ball over the middle, he had to start thinking about evading flag pullers, something even NFL players will take time getting used to. It's not that they don't have the athleticism, High says. It's just a different way of using it. The latest challenge for High will be preventing NFL stars with a sudden interest in flag from taking his job a couple of years from now. One of those is Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Devontae Smith, who is already dreaming of Olympic gold. And he believes the switch to flag could actually magnify his skills because he doesn't have to fear getting crushed. I don't have to worry about ball security, Smith says, so I think I can run a little bit faster now. Smith acknowledges that the switch is much trickier for defenders. Learning how to pull a flag is a distinct skill that requires precise hand-eye coordination at high speeds. And one potential problem for NFL players is that many flag players compete two ways. High plays defensive back in addition to receiver. But Brady is confident that he and his peers will adapt pretty quickly. After the ball is snapped, a defender who lines up 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage can run unimpeded to blitz the quarterback. That's why passers typically have to get the ball out in a flash, a Brady specialty. Much harder will be matching the speed of Team USA's passer, Darrell Housh-Doucette. His 5'7" frame never earned him a look from the NFL, but has helped power Team USA to back-to-back world championships anyway. Turning Brady into that kind of quarterback will take every ounce of creativity from his flag football coach this weekend, the Denver Broncos' Sean Payton. What's certain, though, is that his arm hasn't gone completely dormant. I'll be able to sling it for a long time, Brady says. Never say never. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Saturday/Sunday, March 21st to 22nd, 2026 issues of the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition. We read from the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition every Monday at 7 a.m. Your reader has been Julian Wong. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Volunteer radio readers broadcast daily readings, 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, books, and other printed matter to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service has broadcast almost 40 years of radio readings to those without sight. Our broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,